Welcome back, history lovers. It's me, your favorite red tie internet guy, here once again with another history lesson that's sure to make your brain hurt. So grab your drink and let's dive into this fun little tale of how Germany became two countries. It's a story of war, walls, and political drama. And of course, more beer than you can handle. Anyway, this is Germany. Gotta love it, right? Beautiful shiny streets, enough beer to overdose a horse, and wait, what's that? A giant wall? Yeah, I know what you're thinking. But there's no wall, right? Oh, but there is. Shame! Oh, sort of. Let's rewind a little bit. Here's Germany in 1945, divided into 4 occupation zones. The Soviet zone in the east, because I don't think I need to explain there, and the American, British, and French zones in the west. But honestly, the French didn't really have much say in the post-war drama. They were there, but not exactly at the table when it came to shaping Germany's future. So the big 3 were the Soviets, the Brits, and the Americans. And oh boy, did things get complicated? Leaders of the Allies are meeting to figure out what to do with Germany. After Mustache Man dead. And they've managed to defeat the Nazis, but things are still a mess. So why don't we check on them? Alright guys, Mustache Man's dead, Germany's wrecked, and as much as we love occupying it, we can't stick around forever. So, let's talk about the future of Germany. What's the plan, guys? Oi, of course, mate. Britain's in a bit of a pickle. Of the Germans bombed most of our Britons to the ground, so we should... If you comrades don't want it, I don't mind taking it from you. Think of it as a helping hand. Hold on a bloody minute there, you big bear. We did most of the work, and we didn't let you turn Germany into your personal Bolshevik playground. Comrade, who cares? This is a bit of a pickle. In that tale, Germany got split into 4 sectors. The Soviets took control of the east, while the Americans, the British, and the French divided up the west. But this didn't stay peaceful for long. Things were already starting to get rather tense. Stalin wasn't exactly thrilled with the West helping out the East Germans. Why? Well, he didn't want them to have any hope of recovering or becoming capitalist. He wanted to break them down, make them suffer, and force them into communism. Nice guy, right? The East was full of bombed-out buildings, starving civilians, and military spending going through the roof. But what's this? Giant wall suddenly appears? Wait a second. That wall wasn't supposed to be here. Isn't this supposed to happen a little bit later? Yeah, the Berlin Wall wouldn't come up until a few years later, but the tensions were already there, simmering under the surface. And that's where things got messy. In the East, they created the German Democratic Republic, a Soviet puppet state where people were watched closely and freedom was basically non-existent. And in the West, you had the Federal Republic of Germany, which was basically a capitalist paradise, with Western aid, democracy, and economic growth. The Berlin Wall would soon go up to separate the two, officially splitting the Germanys into 2 hostile camps. Now let's hop over west, where things were actually looking good. Look at this! American flags flying high, Germans are partying with American soldiers, and there's actual economic activity. Money's in use, bombed-out buildings are being rebuilt, and there's this thing called freedom. It's starting to seem pretty nice. So the West was enjoying a quick recovery thanks to the capitalist system. But the Soviets weren't exactly happy about all this. Why? Because in the West, they saw people living their lives, buying products, and building an economy, all things that were completely foreign to the communist system. The East was a mess, but the West, that was quickly bouncing back now. So we're good, right? I mean, there's no reason for war with, well, your entire country, right? Red, I actually think a war with you is inevitable. And that's where the thing started to go downhill. The Cold War begins to heat up, as both sides start eyeing each other suspiciously. The Soviets are like, hey, let's turn the whole world to communist. And the West is like, hey, that's not gonna happen. And when you think it can't get worse, Stalin does something that really stirs the pot. In 1948, Stalin decided to block all land access to West Berlin. Why? Well, the West had been doing all this great stuff, offering aid through the Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe, and showing the Soviets that capitalism was actually working. So Stalin thought, what better way to punish the West than to choke off the supply routes to Berlin? But the West didn't back down. In a stunning show of unity, the Americans and the Brits organized the Berlin Airlift. For over a year, they flew in food, fuel, and supplies to the people of West Berlin, showing the Soviets that the West wouldn't be intimidated. In the end, the Soviets gave up and lifted the blockade in 1949, but the damage was already done. Let's take a deeper dive into the 1950s, where the Cold War truly takes shape in Germany. In West Germany, the Bolshevik wonder, the economic miracle, is in full swing. The US and European allies pump money into rebuilding the country, and the West Germans are living in capitalist dream. West Germany joins NATO in 1955, securing its position in the Western Bloc, while the Soviets retaliate by forming the Warsaw Pact, a military alliance that included East Germany. Meanwhile, in East Germany, the government is trying to shape a socialist state, but the people aren't happy. The heavy-handed control, the lack of freedom, and the economic struggles are pushing people to question the system, and by 1953 there are uprisings. Workers and citizens in East Berlin and other cities protest for better conditions and political freedoms. The protests are crushed, but the disaffection is clear. By the early 1960s, East Berlin had detonated as a mass migration from East Germany to West Germany through Berlin was alarming to the Soviet Union. Over 3 million East Germans had fled to the West by 1961, and this drain of citizens was undermining the communist regime's legitimacy. To stop people from leaving East Berlin and consolidate control, the East German government, under Soviet orders, decided to build the Berlin Wall in August 1961. The Berlin Wall was a physical symbol of the Cold War. It divided families, separated friends, and became a powerful symbol of oppression. For 28 years, the wall stood as a stark reminder of the divide between communism and capitalism, East and West, and the fierce ideological struggles that defined the second half of the 20th century. By the 1970s, tensions between the East and the West began to ease slightly. The Cold War is still very much alive, just like that 102-year-old grandpa that you still have, but both superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, recognized the dangers of direct confrontation. In a period called Detente, is that Russian? Is that English? I don't know. There were efforts to reduce the risk of nuclear war. The Soviet Union and the West signed treaties, including the SALT, Strategic Arms Limitation Talks. What a weird name, I must say. Agreements and the Helsinki Accords in 1975, which aimed at reducing military tensions. West Germany, under Chancellor Willy Brandt, listen, I'm American, that's the best you're getting out of me, also started opening up politically and economically. His Eastern policies sought to improve relationships with East Germany and the Soviet bloc. In 1972, West Germany and East Germany signed the Basic Treaty, which led to increased interaction between the two states, though the wall remained in place. In the 1980s, tensions resurfaced when President Ronald Reagan, who came to power in the United States, took a tough stance against the Soviet Union, calling it the evil empire and demanding that the Berlin Wall be brought down on June 12, 1987. Reagan made his famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate, urging the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the wall. The Cold War was far from over, but a new phase had begun. Meanwhile, in the Soviet Union, a new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, I don't know, I'm pretty sure that guy's not even alive anyway, to correct you, so pronounce it however you want, was bringing significant reforms. His policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, this is too Russian for me, restructuring, aimed at improving the economy and opening of the Soviet society. Gorbachev's approach was in stark contrast to previous leaders and had far-reaching effects on Eastern Europe, including Germany. In 1989, the winds of change were sweeping through Eastern Europe. Protests erupted in East Germany, inspired by the weakening Soviet grip on power and the growing desire for reform. In November 1989, the East German government, under immense pressure, announced that the East Berliners could cross into the West. The wall, which had stood for 28 years, had been breached. People from both sides of Berlin rushed to the wall. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, Families and friends were reunited. The reunification of Germany was no longer a matter of it, but when. In 1990, negotiations between East and West Germany began. After years of division, both sides agreed to reunite the country. The East German government collapsed, and on October 3, 1990, Germany was officially reunified. The country that had been split in two since the end of World War II was now a single nation again. The process of reunification wasn't easy. The East, with a stagnant economy and outdated infrastructure, faced serious challenges. Both the support of the West and the leadership of Chancellor Helmut Kohl, Germany began the difficult work of rebuilding and integrating its two halves. The reunification process was not just a political triumph, it marked the end of the Cold War division that had lasted for nearly half a century. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany also symbolized the end of the Cold War. The Soviet Union, under immense pressure from within and the outside, was crumbling. In December of 1991, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics officially dissolved, marking the end of an era. Germany, now reunited, had not only triumphed over the divisions of the past, but was now a key player in the reunified Europe. And just like that, the tale of two Germanys came to an end. The Berlin Wall that had once divided the city, the country, and even families were gone, replaced by a united Germany, eager to play a part in the new post-Cold War world.